Out of, I think it's about 300 songs that John and I wrote together, we never had a dry session.
For more than 60 years, Paul McCartney has been known as one of the greatest songwriters of all time, a man whose melodies shaped generations and became part of the world's emotional history. When we talk about the Beatles, we talk about a band that changed music forever, but behind many of their warmest, softest, and most emotional songs stood Paul, a person who always wrote straight from the heart. Now, at the age of 80, Paul has finally shared the 5 Beatles songs that mean the most to him. These choices are not about chart success, or about awards, or about what critics say. They are about moments in his life that stayed close to him, memories that shaped him, and feelings that guided him through both the bright and dark years. When Paul speaks about these songs, his voice becomes gentler, warmer, filled with a kind of calm only someone who has lived a long and full life can carry. These songs are like windows into his heart, each one carrying a piece of his past. The first thing Paul always tells people is that music, for him, was never about showing off or trying to be clever. It was never about trying to create the next big hit. At the core, music was about connection, connecting to his own feelings, connecting to the people he loved, and connecting to the world that listened. Even back in the days when the Beatles were just 4 young boys from Liverpool trying to make sense of life and fame, Paul had a natural gift for turning simple emotions into melodies that stayed with people forever. His songs were never complicated. They were simple, honest, and full of heart. That is why so many people felt connected to them. His words were easy to understand, and his music felt like a friend. Now that Paul is older, he carries decades of memories inside him. Memories of his childhood in Liverpool, where he and John Lennon first started writing songs together in small rooms and tiny kitchens, sometimes sitting on the floor with cheap guitars, sharing ideas, laughing, and dreaming of a future neither of them could truly imagine. Memories of early days when they struggled to pay rent. Memories of Beatlemania, when the whole world suddenly wanted a piece of them. Memories of success so great it was almost frightening. Memories of friendships, love, loss, arguments, reunions, and everything in between. And through all of that, one thing never changed: Paul always kept writing. He says that songwriting was like breathing for him. Whenever life felt confusing or heavy, he turned to music, and the music helped him understand what he was feeling. When speaking about his favorite Beatles songs, Paul does not talk like a rock star. He talks like an old friend remembering moments that shaped him. He remembers how his mother, Mary, passed away when he was only 14, a loss that left a deep hole in his heart. Years later, she returned to him in a dream and inspired "Let It Be," a song that became one of the most powerful messages of comfort in the world. He remembers "Penny Lane," a song born from warm childhood memories, full of small details that painted a picture of Liverpool, the barber shop, the bank, the fireman, the little shops and people he saw every day as a boy. He remembers "Yesterday," a melody that came to him in a dream and stayed with him forever, becoming one of the most covered songs in music history. And as he speaks, you can tell that these memories are still alive inside him, fresh and full of emotion even now. Paul always says that songwriting is like catching a butterfly. The idea appears for only a moment, and if you grab it gently, you can turn it into something beautiful. But if you hold too tightly, you might crush it. Many of his best songs were born in small, simple moments. Sometimes he would wake up with a melody already in his mind. Sometimes he would hear something while walking down the street. Sometimes a friend would say a sentence that stayed with him. Many times, he simply felt something deeply, and the words found him. This is why his songs feel honest and easy to connect with, because they came from real moments. And now, at 80, looking back at a lifetime full of melodies, he can finally choose the 5 songs that mattered the most to him. One of the beautiful things about Paul is that he doesn't speak with regret. Many people who reach his age look back and wonder what they could have done differently. But Paul is different. He says he feels lucky that he met John, lucky that the Beatles happened, lucky that the world cared about their music, lucky that he could turn his personal experiences into songs that helped people around the globe. Even when he talks about the difficult days, like the pressure of fame or the painful end of the band, Paul does not sound bitter. He sounds grateful. He says the music was always bigger than the drama. The music was what mattered, When he talks about "Let It Be," his voice softens. He explains how the dream of his mother felt so real that he woke up with tears in his eyes. Her message, "Everything will be all right," was exactly what he needed at a time when the Beatles were falling apart. The arguments, the stress, the pressure, everything was pushing the band apart. But that dream reminded Paul that love and calmness were stronger than chaos. When he sat at the piano and played the melody, he felt like his mother was guiding his hands. This is why the song feels like a prayer, a message of peace. People around the world feel that comfort when they listen to it. And Paul says that is why it will always be one of his favorites. With Penny Lane, his mood becomes brighter. He smiles when he talks about that song because it takes him back to the streets where he grew up. He remembers the bus depot where he and John waited nearly every morning. He remembers the people who worked in the shops. He remembers the small joys of childhood, things that felt ordinary at the time but became precious memories later. When he wrote the song, he wanted to capture the feeling of home, the warmth of being young, the comfort of familiar faces. That is why Penny Lane sounds happy and colorful. The trumpet solo, the bright melodies, the simple lyrics, they all come together to create a picture of a world that felt safe and full of possibilities. Paul says this song will always remain special to him because it reminds him of where he came from. And then there is Yesterday, a song that feels almost magical. Paul says he woke up with the melody fully formed in his mind, something that almost never happens to songwriters. At first, he was afraid to show it to anyone because he thought he had accidentally copied it from another song. He played it for friends and producers, asking if they had heard it before. No one had. And that is when he realized it must have come from somewhere deep within him. When he recorded it, he sang alone with only a string quartet behind him. It was the first time a Beatles song did not include all four members, and even though it was different, it became one of their greatest hits. Paul says he loves the song because it feels pure, honest, and close to his heart. All these songs have something in common: they are pieces of Paul's life. They came from moments that mattered to him, moments of love, loss, childhood, dreams, and deep emotion. And now, at the age of 80, he can look back and see how these songs shaped his journey. They are not just songs to him. They are reminders of who he was, who he loved, and what he learned. And when he shares them with the world, he gives everyone a chance to feel those emotions too. When Paul McCartney reflects on his life in music, he often explains that songs are like emotional photographs. Each one captures a feeling, a moment, a memory, and freezes it in time. Some of those memories are joyful, full of bright colors and laughter. Others are painful, filled with quiet sadness or deep longing. But all of them, he says, are honest. That honesty is what allowed the Beatles' music to connect with millions of people across the world. Paul never tried to hide behind his lyrics. He wrote what he felt, even when the feelings were heavy. And that is why, after so many years, he can look at these 5 favorite Beatles songs and recognize them not just as pieces of art, but as chapters from the story of his own life. When he talks about "Let It Be," he calls it a gift. Not a gift he gave to the world, but a gift that the world gave to him. At the time he wrote it, the Beatles were in the middle of a complicated and stressful period. Tensions were high. Everyone had different ideas, different plans, different visions for the future. The band that once felt like a group of brothers was beginning to feel like 4 separate islands. It was painful for Paul because he was always the one who tried to keep everyone together. He loved the band, and he believed in what they had built. But sometimes, even love can't stop change. In the middle of this emotional storm, his mother appeared in a dream, telling him to trust the process, to stop fighting, to let it be. Paul says that dream saved him. It gave him a sense of peace he desperately needed. That sense of peace is exactly what people around the world feel when they listen to the song. When Paul performs it on stage, even today, he says he always sees people wiping tears from their eyes. Young people, old people, couples, families, even children who were not born until decades after the song was released, all of them connect to the message. That is the magic of the song. It does not belong to any specific generation. It belongs to every heart that needs comfort. Paul often says that music has the power to heal, and Let It Be is one of the clearest examples of that. He says he is humbled whenever people tell him that the song helped them through difficult times, because he wrote it during one of the most difficult times of his own life. Paul's next favorite song, Penny Lane, carries a different kind of emotion. It carries warmth, nostalgia, and the innocence of childhood. When Paul talks about this song, his face always softens. There is a sense of pride in the way he describes the people and places from his early years in Liverpool. He says that childhood memories stay with you in a special way. They become part of who you are, part of what you love, part of the stories you carry for the rest of your life. Penny Lane is filled with small details, the barber showing photographs, the banker driving his motorcar, the fireman with the hourglass, details that might seem simple, but they mean everything to Paul. They are little snapshots of a world that shaped him, a world that taught him kindness, humor, imagination, and the value of community. When he wrote Penny Lane, Paul wanted people to feel like they were walking through Liverpool with him. He wanted them to hear the laughter, smell the bread from the bakery, feel the cool breeze near the bus stop, and sense the comfort of familiar faces. He added bright trumpets and cheerful melodies to make the song sound like sunlight. He added harmonies to make it sound like friendship. When you listen to the song, you cannot help but feel happy. That is exactly what Paul wanted, to give people a moment of pure joy, a reminder that even the simplest places can hold the most beautiful memories. Paul says that Penny Lane stands out in his heart because it reminds him of where he came from. Fame might have taken him far from Liverpool, but it never took Liverpool out of him. Even today, when he returns to the city, people greet him with warmth and familiarity, as if they are welcoming home a family member. That is the power of memory. It keeps you connected to the places and people that made you who you are. And for Paul, Penny Lane is not just a song. It is a home that lives inside him forever. Then there is Yesterday, the song that almost feels unreal. Paul has told the story many times, but he always shares it with the same sense of surprise. One morning, he woke up with the entire melody already formed in his mind. This was something that rarely happened. Most songwriters spend hours, days, or even years working on melodies. But Yesterday arrived like a whisper from somewhere deep inside him. At first, he was unsure if he had accidentally copied the melody from another song. He went around asking friends and musicians if they recognized it. No one did. That is when he understood the melody was his. It had chosen him. The lyrics came later, and they were simple, honest, and full of emotion. A feeling of loss. A feeling of longing. A feeling of wishing you could go back to a time when life felt easier. When he recorded the song with only a string quartet behind him, it was a brave decision. It was unlike anything the Beatles had done before. No drums. No guitars. No harmonies. Just Paul's soft voice and the smooth sound of the strings. It was pure emotion turned into music. And the world responded. Millions of people connected to it. Artists from around the globe began covering it in their own styles: jazz, soul, country, classical. It became one of the most recorded songs in history. Paul says that even after all these years, whenever he sings Yesterday, he still feels the quiet sadness in the melody. It reminds him of the delicate nature of life, the way things change so quickly, the way time moves forward even when our hearts want to stay in the past. But that sadness is gentle, not heavy. It is the kind of sadness that helps you grow. Paul believes that this is why the song is still loved today. It makes people feel understood. It lets them know they are not alone in their pain. As Paul continues to reflect on his favorite songs, he talks about how music shaped his entire life. He says he never expected the Beatles to become what they became. He never expected their songs to become timeless. He was just a young boy who loved music, who loved writing, who loved creating something beautiful out of simple feelings. When he and John first started writing songs together, they didn't think about fame. They didn't think about awards. They just wanted to write something good, something they could be proud of. And the fact that people around the world still listen to their music 60 years later feels unbelievable to him. Paul often says that the best songs are the ones that feel honest. Not the ones with the most complicated chords. Not the ones with the fanciest words. But the ones that come from a real place inside your heart. Each of the 5 Beatles songs he chose carries honesty at its core. Whether it is comfort, nostalgia, sadness, hope, or childhood memories, each song reflects a true feeling. That is why they lasted. That is why they still touch people today. Because truth never grows old. More than anything, Paul hopes that these songs continue to help people. He hopes they make someone smile when they are sad, or help someone feel calm when life gets difficult, or remind someone of a moment they thought they had forgotten. He says that music is one of the strongest ways human beings connect with each other. You might not know the person sitting next to you at a concert, but when the music starts, you feel the same beat, the same emotion, the same energy. Music makes strangers feel like friends. And the Beatles, with all their melodies and messages, created a sense of unity that touched the whole world. Paul knows that life changes. Friends come and go. Success rises and falls. But songs remain. They become a part of people's lives, a part of their weddings, their birthdays, their quiet nights, their heartbreaks, their hopes. And when he sees people singing his songs decades later, he feels grateful beyond words. He never imagined his music would become a companion to so many people around the world. But it did. And that is why these 5 songs, the ones closest to his heart, more than just music. They are living pieces of history, filled with the emotions that shaped him as a young man, and still shape him today.